Boston Celtics taking on their toughest playoff opponent, the Indiana Pacers. So let's do a crossover preview of the show right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster Brand, it's holiday season. Drop Jrue in the mix, and 3 from KP. No, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Juice, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in locked on NASA. Karalis on the breakdown. Clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and J's, how we started, raising business, how we finish. Locked on Celtics pod, home of the winners. Peace.
Hey there. Welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcast. It's right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and I got you covered every day, Monday through Friday. Bonus podcasts when they play, which they're doing a lot on the weekend. So I'm podcasting basically for 2 weeks straight. So make sure you're subscribed, get onto that YouTube page, get into the comment section. Let me know what you're thinking about the team, about what I'm saying. I'm John Karalis. I've been covering the Celtics team for about 20 years. I'm doing it as the beat writer for Boston Sports Journal. I've also written a couple of books. Built Different celebrates Banner 18. Go buy it on johnkaralis.com. Signed, personalized copies, $30 right to your door in the United States. So go ahead and order that. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Today we're talking about the Celtics and the Pacers. The Celtics are 4-0. The Indiana Pacers are 1-3, I believe. They are struggling. The Celtics are not, but the Pacers are, as you heard on this podcast, the toughest opponent the Celtics faced in the playoffs last year. So I'm expecting a little, a tough game, no matter what. When the Celtics and the Pacers get together, I just feel like it's tough. And so we decided to do a crossover preview of the show. I usually have Tom Westerholm here. Now I had Tony East. If your first name begins with a T and your last name is a direction, you are a guest on this show. So if you have, Timothy North, if you're out there, hit me up. You're probably due for a guest spot on this show. But Tony and I, Tony hosts Locked On Pacers, got together for a Locked On crossover preview. Here it is.
Eastern Conference Finals rematch. The Pacers probably looking very forward at their chance to beat the Celtics. The Celtics maybe don't think as much about the Pacers as the Pacers think about the Celtics, yet here we are anyway. And yet maybe I'm wrong about what I just said. I'm Tony East. I host Locked On Pacers. Y'all know on the other side, it's John Karalis with Locked On Celtics. And John,
yes, sir,
you nailed the interview of the summer that we have to talk about before we really get rolling today.
Yeah, my guy, Joe Mazzulla, head coach of the Celtics, popped onto the Locked On Celtics podcast. Using that Rhode Island connection. We're just two Rhode Island boys trying to get through this crazy life in the NBA.
Well, as my listeners know, Joe Mazzulla thought the Pacers were a pretty tough opponent, didn't he, John?
He did. You want to hear what he had to say?
Let's do it.
You're a very aware person. You're very aware of, hey, and you might get knocked out when you're out there. You might get hurt. You might lose. All of that stuff.
You have to surrender to that because it's a true possibility. You don't like have as much control as you think you do, or as other people think that we do, like to me, and I learned this when I watched the Orlando Lakers series. They won 4-1, but 3 of the games went into overtime. Like that Indiana series was by far the toughest series and we swept them, but it should have went game 7. And we fought, they fought. And so like what you have to have an understanding that, we have to fight for the things that we can control, but there's so much that goes on that you can't control. If, we're trying to foul up 3 and give Nesmith a wide open corner 3, if he makes that and we go into overtime on the road, it's a completely different game. If they call the timeout to advance it, we don't knock the ball out of bounds to get the baseline out of bounds steal. So like we couldn't control whether they call the timeout or not. They just didn't do it. And that put us in position. If Carlisle calls a timeout to go for the 2-for-1 at the end of game 3, Jrue doesn't get the steal. And so there's all these things that, obviously the players had to perform at a high level in which they did, but there's also a list of things that I wrote down that I'm like, here are all the things that happened that we had no control over. And we got to practice this list of things to try and gain a little bit more control over, but there's still stuff that you have to surrender to within a game.
So,
well, John, half the listeners are now seething in anger, and half are very happy.
Yeah. So I think the reaction from the Pacers side was probably like, yeah, Rick Carlisle should have called that timeout. And yeah, like a couple of things going a different way. And it's an entirely different series. But that's the difference between a Pacers team, young, coming up, where just from the outside perspective, my feeling was always their strength is their unpredictability. And that's what made them, we talked about it before the series. They are kind of randomized. And when things are so randomized, it's hard to say, this is a tendency, this is what you harp on. But when things are so randomized, there's nothing to go to down the stretch. There's no consistency. There's no, these are our closing guys or our closing, plays or whatever, especially when Halliburton wasn't himself. Maybe this year when Halliburton kind of gets up to speed, you guys have a little bit of a different like closer. When we saw it at the beginning of the season where, around playing tournament time, Halliburton was your closer. So, but at that point, I think that kind of hurt the Pacers, and the Celtics had more of an identity of, we know what we're doing in the last few minutes. And that's why the Celtics were able to close out fourth quarters and the Pacers weren't. And just because it went 4 games, I think Mazzulla is absolutely right. The Pacers could have taken that to 7. The Pacers could have won that series. It's weird to say that the team that got swept could have beaten the eventual champions, but a lot of those games could have gone either way. And to bring it to today, Tony, I think that gives them a lot of confidence. Like, I'm expecting Wednesday night, even though the two teams aren't in the same place to start the season, I just expect a Pacers team that to look at Boston and be like, no, we know we can hang with you. We're confident, and I expect that game to be a tough one.
Yeah, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the regular season, only Indiana and Denver beat the Celtics twice last year. Is that correct? Maybe someone else did it by the end of the year.
No, those were the only two teams that beat the Celtics twice last year.
Yeah. So that's what made me think going into the series. Like we both picked the Celtics to win. We did a podcast together, but we thought I said 6, right? I think you said 5. I said 6. I can't.
Yeah,
remember.
I think
Maybe
so.
I said 7. You
sounds
said
right.
6, something like that. Like we thought it'd go longer than it did, and the margins between it going longer than it did and what actually happened was like 4 plays, right? They just all happened to be advantage Celtics, and a lot of that stuff was what Mazzulla just said. Like the Celtics capitalized on what the Pacers did poorly or incorrectly, but they couldn't control those things. And I think it's very telling that the team they had the best result against, he was like, no, that was the hardest. That said, I don't know if the Pacers are playing that way right now. Like I think that they will be as ready as you can be for this game. They've shown they can hang with Boston, sure, but there are shifting dynamics to make it different, even though you're right that especially in the regular season when there's not as much like honing in on guys and their tendencies, that unpredictability was their superpower at times last year, and it just hasn't been really popping so far.
Yeah, I mean, but it's so early in the season. Like we're not even at Halloween, right?
No, right.
If you haven't even, created a couple of new cavities from all the Halloween candy, there's no way we can properly assess what's happening in the league. Although with the Celtics, I think there is, because of who they are, you can with them because they're good, right? The Celtics are a good team, and they played the Milwaukee Bucks without Kristaps Porzingis, without Sam Hauser, who's like their 7th or 8th man, and a big time shooter, and with Jayson Tatum having a poor shooting game, and they still ended up with an 18-point lead at one point in the fourth quarter. So the Celtics are pretty good, and so that I think we feel pretty confident in that one. The Pacers, I still think they're gonna be pretty good, and I think the question with the Pacers kind of goes hand in hand with the Bucks. If the Bucks aren't going to be able to figure themselves out, do the Pacers have a chance to kind of maybe sort of sneak into that 4th seed? I know you just lost to Orlando. Orlando's a team that's going to be fighting for that as well. I know that it's a tough start, but I am not deterred from believing that the Indiana Pacers are going to be in the middle of the pack, trying to maybe try to sneak into that top 4.
I think they would like that. They need to figure some stuff out. Certainly, they've looked a lot better the last game and a half they've played, and we'll get to the look of these teams in a second. But they've got to be at their absolute best to beat Boston, right? Like the in-season tournament game, what they shoot 40 something percent from deep, and like
it was a
the
ridiculous.
Celtics were kind of off on that cerulean court. What like the other time they won, I think, was the game Halliburton actually got injured and they had a really good start. That one was extremely impressive. That was one of Bruce Brown's last like awesome Pacers performances. That's another thing though. Since they acquired Siakam, they have not beaten the Celtics. So there's just, I get that they can. I think they have a chance, but the way they're playing right now makes it a little different. I do want to talk about, John, what is really different about these teams. But I think before we do that, we should talk about our good friends. Should we not?
We should. Great friends. The best of friends.
Those friends, the good people over at Game Time, making it easy for you to get tickets to the comedy, theater, sports, whatever you're trying to attend near you, because they take the guesswork out of buying tickets with many awesome features like their curated deals and their super deals and their seat views. I used it to go watch the New York Liberty play in the Barclays Center. Spot on seat view in the app. They have their lowest price guarantee, meaning they'll credit you 110% of the difference if you find cheaper tickets elsewhere in the same section in row for less. Event cancellation protection and job loss protection, and their newest feature, Game Time Picks, filtering out the fluff so you can see your favorite teams play with only the incredible deals on great seats. You don't have to waste your time searching through thousands of tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time.
Game time.
Back with Locked On Celtics and Locked On Pacers as we team up to yell the word game time at the same time.
That's
game.
That's that continuity, man.
Conference
Which
finals
Celtics
fun.
have.
John, how many new players are in this game compared to the conference finals? The Pacers have James Wiseman and Johnny Furphy on their roster, but James Wiseman's not going to play. Is it just Shireman? Is that it?
Shireman. No, that's it. That's it. That's the only new guy that's going to play.
So two rookies, the 30th pick and the 35th pick, are the only potentially new additions to this.
To
this from last year's series, because Wiseman's not going to play.
Like we were talking about an actual rematch.
Which is fun, but also strange, because I'm sure you went over this on Locked On Celtics, but like a big talking point here and on this podcast, Locked On Pacers, was, hey, continuity means the Pacers should start the season pretty well. They have this advantage of playing together and knowing what it takes and how that should go. I don't know how much you brought that up, but like obviously when you win the championship, you should be good again. But the Celtics have come out like a continuity-driven team, and the Pacers have not. What is different at all, if anything, about Boston so far through their undefeated to this point start?
There's not a ton that's different necessarily. There's like little, like Jaylen Brown has a little extra muscle. He's being a little bit more of a bully on his drives and maybe doing a little bit more work in the post. Jayson Tatum is, his jump shot is a tiny bit more compact,
That's awesome.
It's just the slightest little tweak in his jumper, just a little less of a dip, just a little quicker release. Not much to it, but you can tell it feels smoother, more compact. No Porzingis, he's out.
That's big.
That's going to be, but I saw him warming up. He's going to be fine. It seems, and back soon enough. But they're getting a little more from Xavier Tillman. Tillman's maybe hitting a couple more shots. You're going to see Jordan Walsh, who was on the team but didn't play. So you might see a little bit more of him, especially as wing heavy as the Pacers are. You're going to need kind of like a chaotic, high energy wing defender out there. So you might see a little bit more Jordan Walsh, which would be different. And then, a couple of the assistant coaches, because Charles Lee left and went to Charlotte and took a couple of guys with him. So there's, a little bit of new blood in there, but mostly the same. But as I said on my podcast last night, and I think this definitely applies to the Pacers, I don't care that it's a lot of the same players. Yes, it's going to help. The continuity is going to help, but a new season brings new challenges. There's new points of emphasis from the officials. The opponents are different. Just everything is about the rest of the league is different and new, and attitudes change over the summer. So there's a re-entry to this. It's almost like coming back from space. There's still there's still a process involved to come back to this season, and you can't shy away from that process. The Pacers, the Celtics, yeah, it's going well for the Celtics right now, but also like they caught the Knicks right away, then they played Detroit and Washington, so those two bad teams, and they played the Bucks, who are figuring themselves out. So yeah, Boston's 4-0. That things could change if they face better opponents, and the Pacers are a better opponent in a lot of ways because they do the thing that the Celtics have the most trouble with.
Well, hopefully they can do it because through 4 games, they've done it for 1.5 games, basically. I'd say they had some that was kind of Pacers-y against the Pistons in the fourth quarter, but in general, the stuff that has changed, if anything has changed for the Pacers. And that's another thing you mentioned that I did bring up, even the same roster chemistry can change year to year because guys have different financial goals or different roles on the team, just like your reality changes. So yeah, it sounds so obvious that continuity can help in XYZ ways. But
do you have anybody on an expiring or anything like that, or extension?
Just Myles Turner.
Okay.
Just Myles Turner.
Okay.
10th year with one team, John. I know that's not what related to what we're talking about. That's crazy.
Incredible for a guy who's been in as many trade rumors as he's been,
including many with the. You've probably talked quite a bit about Myles Turner on.
Yeah, man. It's for a guy that's been traded to every team in the league, for him to still be there for 10 seasons. It's incredible. I'm sorry I interrupted you.
It is. I would like to check the Celtics roster, Myles Turner's rookie year, just to give everybody a nice how long this guy really been doing it that year kind of deal. Yeah, Avery Bradley, Jay Crowder, RJ Hunter, Jonas Jerebko, good times. Anyways, what we were talking about, what's been different for the Pacers is they don't have the pace, which it's in their name, right? They have gotten back to looking a little more random and effective these last 2 games. The ball's popping. Maybe it's just that they're making threes. But among the things that look different is their pace has been bottom 10 in the league, which is really crazy. They finally got back to it in the second half against the Sixers, where they would run off of makes, and they did it against the Magic at times, but they don't feel as fast yet. Even though they're still passing a lot, it's still the same talent that's getting into their random actions quicker. Their stars are more involved. Halliburton finally got going as a passer in their last game. All this sounds great, but it's slower still somehow. Some of it's that other teams are rebounding differently, on their backs, so they can't just turn and run. Some of it is full court pressure so that they can't turn and run, right? All sorts of things. But without the pace part of it, you're not wearing teams down as much, or it's less unpredictable. It's slower or unpredictable, so you can react a little quicker. It just hasn't felt the same. And against the Celtics in the playoffs last year, even after Halliburton got hurt, they were moving. They were quick, getting into stuff. The pace was there. The ball was popping, and it helped that Nembhard looked like the 5th best player on the planet for 2 games. So none of that has been the case this season. And so even though they have the same team and surely would like to finally take down Boston, they haven't looked like that team, and that's what's going to make this fascinating to me is, can they get it back to it for 48 minutes? Because even if they lose to Boston, if they look good, people will feel better, but they haven't had that enough.
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting because I feel like from what you're saying, the Celtics will react by throwing some full court pressure, which they like to do from time to time, especially when you have Pritchard in there. He likes to hound guys full court, and that's what somebody like Jordan Walsh will do. And obviously Jrue Holiday and Derek White can get up there and hound full court. So you might see some of that defensively from the Celtics trying to slow the Pacers down. But it's the 3-pointers. I think ultimately it's just going to come down to the 3-pointers, and is the variance going to grab somebody? The Celtics have been super hot to start the season. I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but the Celtics, I know Celtics opponents have 40 3-pointers, and the Celtics, I'll just scroll right down to it right now, have
they had 40 a game?
86. 86.
Wow.
So the Celtics have 46 more 3-pointers than their opponents this season. It's a lot. That gap will close, I think, against the Pacers. And so it's always going to come down to that variance. The Celtics are shooting 43% from 3 this season. That is obviously unsustainable. And the question is, where is that going to come from? When is it going to hit? And how hard Is it going to be, oh, well, Jaylen had a rough night, or Jayson had a rough night, which Jayson just had one, or it's one or two guys, or is it going to be like everybody? One of those weird things where I never understand it. I don't understand how an entire team can just go cold.
It just happened to the Pacers. It just happened.
I don't understand how a team full of good shooters, how not one or two could not like go, at least with the Celtics against the Bucks didn't shoot great. They did not shoot great, but Peyton Pritchard was 8 of 12 from 3. And so it looks like, well, the Celtics shot 38%, and that's just an slightly above average shooting night for them. No, the rest of the Celtics kind of shot like crap, and Peyton Pritchard bailed them out. I don't understand why those games don't happen more often, and you have more of like that game with the Pacers where just no one can do the thing. So that's kind of like the number one thing I'm looking for is when we look at can the Pacers actually win this? Like, yeah, of course they can, because they take a bunch of 3-pointers and
well, do they?
Well, they have. They have in the past. Do they not this season?
That's where I was going to go. They just played the Magic and took 29 threes.
That's ridiculous.
It was very, very strange.
So we're still early in the season, and I haven't started like really watching everybody else yet. So that shocks me. I didn't see that box score in like 29.
29.
29 and a half.
Celtics 43% from 3 this year. That leads the league. Hey, by the way, the 2 undefeated East teams are both shooting over 40% from 3. Turns out that's pretty important. Pacers currently 31.1% from 3, 5th worst in the league. That's just percentages. Attempts, Celtics 50.3. That's insane. I don't know how they're doing that. Pacers 30.5, 27th in the league. Unrecognizable in that way. Last year, the Celtics were 1st in the league. The Pacers were 15th, but their team kind of changed when they got Siakam, and the Pacers were 9th in percentage. The Celtics were 2nd. So they have changed their dynamics as a shooting team tremendously. They've gotten back a little bit in percentage the last 2 games, but the attempt count is much lower, which is so interesting because part of being random and playing fast requires spacing. And if you're not taking as many threes or spacing the floor as much, it's just a little different. So, yes, the variance part could very well help the Pacers, who got up a lot of threes last year. They haven't as much this year. I find that very interesting.
Well, it's interesting because the Celtics want to play fast, and if they do that in this game, then they'll kind of jumpstart, no pun intended, jumpstart the Pacers, because the Pacers are, they're the team that wants to play, is supposed to want to play fast. The Celtics have been getting up a lot of shots. What are they averaging shots per game here? It's 90.5 shots per game, up a little bit year over year. So the Celtics are getting a bunch of shots up, and 50 of those are from 3. So they are very much in the take a bunch of threes, more than 2s. So I don't know. It'd be interesting to see if the Celtics decide, hey, maybe we don't want to play fast in this game, or if this is just like, hey, look, it's the regular season. We don't care if this helps the Pacers. We're just going to do what we do. And, like we're sitting here breaking down matchups, and they're certainly going to go through their film session and have their scouting reports, but it's not like a playoff series where you're diving into everything, over and over and over and over again. So I just know the Celtics want to play fast. And if that helps the Pacers, then congratulations. And that's part of why I would expect a better game than maybe even you're expecting.
Well, let's talk about some other ways that the Pacers could, in theory, win this, or the Celtics could just run away with it. John, maybe the answer is just no Kristaps Porzingis, but what would you describe, if any, as the Celtics' weak points so far this season that the Pacers could look to exploit, if anything?
Yeah, I guess it would be
nothing like guess to make a team feel confident against their opponent.
I know.
Maybe this.
Yeah, possibly, maybe. Like, I don't want to come off like, I know every time I do one of these crossovers, the other team's fans are like, boy, that guy was pretty arrogant. But like, no,
they're really good.
They're just good. Like, okay, what's the weak spot? Is it Jrue Holiday? No. Is it Derek White? No. Is it Jaylen Brown or Jayson Tatum? No. It's okay. Al Horford's 38. So that's going to be the place where you have to take advantage of that matchup, because the Celtics don't want to and shouldn't want to put Al Horford out there for too long and in too strenuous a situation on October 30th. If this was a playoff series, maybe different story, but you gotta put Horford in the actions. You gotta try to make him switch. If he drops, you gotta take those jump shots. And then it's a matter of the backups. What is that rotation going to be? They have three distinctly different centers in Luke Cornett, Xavier Tillman, and Diminished Queta. I don't think we're going to see Queta in this game, but I don't know. Maybe if the Pacers are getting to the rim a lot, maybe they want to get the tall, kind of slower guy that could block some shots. Cornett can do that, but Cornett is more of a short roll guy on offense, whereas Queta is just a pick setter. He's not going to do anything besides offensive rebound. And then Tillman is your
then he will be perfect against the Pacers.
Yeah,
he will do very well.
There you go. And maybe he does get a lot of time. But I'm just thinking defensively, maybe this is a big Tillman series, and you just try to see if the Celtics go with him and switch. But that's it. That's going to be the weak spot. Is they're not going to put Al Horford out there in his 18th season to chase around all of these Pacers
right
now, right? If the Celtics and Pacers match up again, which, look, don't take this personally, I hope not. I'm so sick of going to Indiana for Pacers playoff series. I want to go somewhere else when the playoffs come along just to vary my thing. Like, no offense, Indiana. Like, I like going there. I just only seem to go to Indiana. Give me a new city. Give me someplace else.
John, I'm getting flashbacks of Boston hotel prices and feeling the exact same way. I hope I don't see you this year.
Yeah, right? No, but anyway, if the Celtics and Pacers do match up again, then then Horford and Porzingis, presumably if he's healthy, would play different roles. But that's, if you're going to win this game and I'm drawing up a game plan, I'm attacking Horford and seeing what the Celtics are going to do defensively with him. And if the Celtics live with whatever happens. If you're torching him, you're torching him. If you're not, you're not. But he's going to be on an island.
It's just hard to figure out who to attack him with. Because if he's on Myles Turner's not going to ISO anybody. And you're not like dying to bring in any other Celtics player into a screen action, right? Because they're all good defenders if they switch. So it's not easy to do that. That's like Mazzulla's best thing, is he'll just do this goofy matchup that everyone's like, why is this guy guarding this guy? Yeah. And then it's awesome. Then another team tries to pick on it and it doesn't lead to any success. I think that's going to be a trouble for the Pacers, just trying to find the weak points if there are any. And maybe that answer is just play your game, hope you shoot well for the third game in a row. But I think a lot of teams would like that to be the case against the Celtics.
My guess,
and it hasn't.
My guess. So Halliburton, Siakam, Nembhard, Nesmith, Turner. That's your starting. That's your regular starting five. My guess is that Holiday starts on Turner, and
similar to the Cat matchup on opening night.
Yeah, and Horford starts on Siakam, and you either say, "Okay, Siakam, go try to cook. Go ahead and try to cook, and whatever happens," and you try to take everyone else out, or I think that would probably be the matchup, or maybe you hide him somewhere else. But I would say try to bait the Pacers into Myles Turner post-ups. Just try to bait him into that and be like, oh my God, Mouse in the house. And just if Myles Turner is taking a bunch of 2-point shots, then congratulations, you've played right into Boston's hands. The Celtics will give up a lot of 2-point shots and take a lot of threes and math you to death. So that's where I think the Celtics will go. Holiday on Turner and see if he can bait them in. And then if Horford's on Siakam, you could do like a scram switch or something like that, or where you just see how that matchup goes.
Yeah, Horford's or if that happens, Siakam will set a billion screens, but it's just what you try to live with, right? And If anyone says, "Hey, why did they go to Turner with Jrue Holiday on him for post-ups?" I will just send them the clip package of Cat trying to do that last week and say, "No, don't do that. Stop doing that." It was like when everyone for years was like, "They should post up James Harden." I'm like, that's the only thing James Harden can guard is post-ups. Don't give him the chance.
Don't right.
To do the only thing he's good at defensively.
Yeah.
Pacers key-wise, they just have to guard a little to me, because if the Celtics are flowing on offense, Pacers have no chance because of how well they've shot this year and how well oiled of a machine they look. And stops, like, let the Pacers run a little bit, which they've tried to get back into but haven't really been able to. I don't know how the Pacers are going to be able to get a ton of stops. They've been really tinkering with their rotation, like every game, different guys are in at different times, which has been interesting to me. But that, if the Pacers can't hold them under, I'll make this up, but like 120, they'll just lose. They just won't have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's very simple and boring, but that would be my.
It's basically straight, dead on.
These Pacers have not hit 120 in a game yet this year, which is including an overtime game. Like they just haven't been the same fun offense yet, and so they gotta.
I'm sorry. The Celtics are averaging 124.3.
Yeah, good luck, everybody else. So if they can get some stops and get some easy transition buckets, or like feel like themselves, they'll be in it. But if they give up that, their offense hasn't been close to good enough to keep up with a team like that, right? So it'd be huge for the Pacers early season. Their schedule's super tough for the first 14 games. 13's been the number that I've identified for them that they need to survive. They have not been surviving so far. So this would be huge for their early season outlook. Celtics are like, yeah, let's keep going. Let's keep it rolling.
I don't know, man. Maybe it's the PTSD from the series. Like, I have a healthy fear of the Pacers, and maybe they're not there yet. And this will continue on Wednesday night, but I'm still like, I'll believe it when I see it. The Celtics could easily win by 40. They could easily like lose by 15. And I mean, I guess that goes for any game, but just the Pacers are that team for Boston that's like, we're on the verge of it becoming a real thing. And this would be great for Boston if they didn't make it a thing, but if the Pacers win this game, it becomes the wow, hey, the Pacers, and then or maybe personally I want them to win this game. Maybe I want the Pacers to win this game because then my Joe Mazzulla clip gets out there again.
You could link the episode like 10
maybe it's a great promotional, because it's not going to derail the Celtics. I still think they're going to win a championship, but for me, that would be good. No, I think this.
Do you really need more promotional things after your Jordan Walsh like verbatim calls?
Yes.
Come on.
Yes.
Unbelievable. For those who don't know, I will promote this for you.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, John was talking about Jordan Walsh on Locked On Celtics and explained some things about the way he is playing and could play differently. 2 days later, right? Practice interviews.
Yeah.
Walsh talking about stuff he can do better. Basically verbatim said the same things.
Yeah.
I'm not saying like said the same general things, like bar for bar. It was crazy.
I used the speed limit analogy about him playing like 110, 115. He should be at 80. And he literally said, I'm playing at 117. I got to like chill at like 87. I'm like, oh my God. As he was saying that, he was talking, I'm like editing it in my head. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is great, Jordan. Just keep going, baby.
No, you need more viral clips. That's what I was thinking.
I mean, look, do not underestimate the fragility of my ego. More attention, please.
Well, also, no one has taken the belt yet, right? This is the Pacers' chance.
That's it. The belt, the NBA belt, is up for grabs. For people who don't know, NBA belt, the champion comes in to the next season with the NBA belt, a fictional NBA belt. Then you got to defend it just like wrestling or MMA or boxing or anything like that. And it's just game by game. So the Celtics have defended it 4 times. Now it's up for grabs against the Pacers. Pacers have a chance to grab the belt. If the day ever comes where the league actually creates an NBA belt because of this, that's the day I quit. Because that's the end. I've reached the pinnacle. Instead of the in-season tournament, or maybe in addition to the in-season tournament, come in with the big belt, hold it up at center court before the game, and the winner gets to take it with them. That would be perfect.
People would care about that too. Who ended the last regular season with it? Do you remember?
I think the Lakers.
I think it was LA or someone like pretty good but not awesome. If I
think the
recall
Lakers
correctly.
have. It's always an interesting like journey, and it's like somebody weird at the end.
I always love when it's like
Lakers.
I always love when it's like the 1-10 February upset for like 2 days where it's like the Hornets have the belt. They beat somebody good.
And they give it right back. But,
I love that. Oh man, John, we crushed this as we do. Let's tell your people and my people about you and what's coming on Locked On Celtics.
Oh, well, I was born in Locked On Celtics podcast 1973. Do the math. That's a lot of math. Locked On Celtics. I'm podcasting after every game too. So like, if you're ever interested in about the Celtics, like I'm on a stretch here where I'm podcasting for like 2 weeks straight because of the Celtics schedule. And also my writing at Boston Sports Journal, where I put pen to paper proverbially. That's where you can find me.
No pen and no paper, but you are doing exactly that.
I wish sometimes it was pen and paper. Give me some good old parchment and a quill with a dipping well for ink.
I remember stuff better when I write it down versus type it down, but I just don't want to bring that much stuff to my desk at games. It's just too much.
I'm with you, and you're right, because I had a notebook. I bought one of those like cool little Wilson with the basketball thing. I'm like, oh, I'm so cool. And like, I don't take notes because I've got no place to put it at the media section, because I'm like right next to some. I'm elbowing people every day trying to write. So yeah, it is kind of hard to remember. I got to go like back through my tweets. That's the only way I can remind myself of what I was thinking.
I did love Boston's media section's proximity to the court, but I also did not like how close I was to other people in said section. Can't win them all.
Always a good time talking to Tony. Thank you for tuning in, both Celtics and Pacers fans. Thank you for hopping on, and I hope you enjoyed this crossover. Try to do those every once in a while here. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts. Watch the show on YouTube. Make sure you're subscribed to our free newsletter, lockedondaily.com. Sign up for the free newsletter. Get it daily to your inbox. A recap of the show, things from around the league, fantasy, all that stuff. So it's a great way to stick around with the whole league. Check that out. And now I would love it if you shared the podcast and told everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.